Aloha Sidzillions! Welcome back to another video. For this episode of This and That in Stars, I will be reviewing both the book and the movie for Red, White, and Royal Blue. This video, as you probably read in the title, will be containing spoilers, so if you are not okay with that, have already read the book, and or have already watched the movie, please go do so, then come back and finish the video. So speaking of spoilers, one thing that I wanted to mention is that I've had the book on my want to read list for a very long time. I'm not sure how long exactly, but it had been a while. But the reason that I prioritized reading it when I did, especially continuing to wait however much longer, is because I got movie clips sent to me on TikTok or that I would choose to click on YouTube. And I'm a person who does not care about spoilers for shows, spoilers for movies. Maybe I should, but I don't. This happens time and time over with multiple franchises. I won't get into it here, but just know that I myself am okay with it. In fact, in this particular case, knowing those spoilers about the movie actually made my enjoyment reading the book better because I knew what iconic scenes to look forward to. And when they came up, I was very excited. I could think about what was going to happen next, and it would get me intrigued to keep reading so I could reach that scene. Also, when I finally watched the movie, it gave me the context that I was missing because certain scenes happened after scenes that I thought they actually happened before of. Like I had the timeline order backwards, and this was nice to just put it into a concrete order of this happens, then this, as opposed to me thinking event 2 was actually event 1, or however you want to explain it. When I was reading the book, there was actually something really interesting that I learned for the first time. I've lived on this earth 23 years and it never occurred to me. And this is what I learned. In the States, the president's spouse is always referred to as the first lady. Or I guess technically the first gentleman, but we just have not had IRL female presidents ever in all of history. So it's the first lady or the first gentleman. Now what do you call the vice president's spouse? I never once thought about this, like I said, but the vice president's spouse is the second lady, or the second gentleman. Like, how did I never think to put those dots together and be like, yeah, that makes sense, first and second. This book told me. They had a line in here talking about Nora's grandparents, and I was like, oh my god, that's so genius, that is so correct. How did I not know that? The book also taught me a little bit about geography because I looked it up. And Lake Lyndon B. Johnson, where Alex has his family lake house, is in fact a real lake. It is a for real reservoir in Texas. If you want to go rent a home and have a vacation, you can do so. In the movie, there were 2 scenes that the actors did film, but that they chose to cut out of the final film. One of them is the Cornettos scene. They're in Kensington Palace after the cake incident. Alex is hanging out in the guest quarters and Henry comes over to check the freezer. That scene is obviously in the book, but it's only a deleted scene from the movie. You have to go find the clip online elsewhere. And same with the scene of them talking at the campfire. That was shot, but not included in the movie. There is a montage of scenes when Alex is giving his final speech at the end, and you can see them sitting at the campfire, but the entirety of that scene was not included earlier on. The specific reason that I bring that up is because there are a number of differences between the book and the film. I've written a list, trusty iPad notes, and we will be going over that next. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. And it's not just the action of the scene or the character of the scene that I am referring to, it's also the quotes of the scene. Sometimes the line is only in the book version, sometimes the line is only in the movie version, and sometimes they've been paraphrased. You can tell that it's the same thing, but it's not 100% identical. Now, some of the scenes that were cut, it makes a lot of sense that they were cut and never shot because the entire book is Alex's POV. Those scenes would not be good in a movie for a number of reasons. As well, given the change of character, I will explain that first thing on my list, they physically cannot film that scene because character 2, character 3, however many are in that scene, do not exist. So let's now go through my list of key major differences between the book and the movie, like I mentioned, starting off with difference of characters. In the book version of the story, we have a character named June. June Claremont Diaz is Alex's older sister. We have Liam, who is Alex's friend from high school. We have a man named Rafael Luna, an openly gay Mexican senator. We have a man named Leo, because in the book, Ellen and her husband have gotten divorced, Alex's two parents, and now Leo is the stepdad when Ellen has moved on. In the book, we have Henry's mother, and also Henry has a grandma. It is Queen Mary. In the film, none of these characters exist, except for the grandma, who has been replaced by a man. It is now his grandpa, the king, instead. They've just swapped genders on that character. In the movie, we have a character named Michael, and I thought for a second that maybe he was supposed to be the film's version of Liam. They just changed the character and stuff, but I don't believe that's actually true in the end, because in one of the scenes when Alex is talking to Nora post kissing Henry for the first time, she asks him how many guys he's been with, and he says a guy from high school and Michael, like they are two separate people. Knowing that Liam is the guy from high school, you can't have Michael be Liam if high school and Michael are different people. It doesn't add up. And also, speaking of Michael, I just want to say that for whatever reason, I could not stand his character. There was something about whenever he was on screen that my anxiety and my nerves would just rise to the nth degree, and I could not stand him. I'm not saying he's necessarily a bad guy or the villain of the story, but he did do some questionable things, and I just do not like him at all. Despise him. The next difference is where Alex and Henry met each other for the first time. In the book, they meet in 2016. It is the Rio de Janeiro Summer Olympics in Brazil, whereas in the movie, it is the Melbourne Climate Conference. So they're in an entirely different continent and country, entire opposite side of the world, Brazil versus Australia. The next difference is from when the two guys go to the hospital to talk and meet with some of the sick patients. In the book, Henry is talking with one of the patients about Star Wars, favorite characters, this and that, a number of things about the franchise. Whereas in the movie, we do not get that conversation at all. There is one scene where we watch Alex look at Henry as he's talking to a young girl, and we can't hear what they're saying, so maybe that is the Star Wars conversation off screen, but definitively to be heard in the film, it does not happen. There is no mention of that other franchise. The next difference happens in the turkey scene. In the book version, there is much more phone conversation than the amount of conversation we get in the movie version. They do have a great phone call. I love every minute of that scene, don't get me wrong, but there are some iconic parts from the book that did not make it into the movie. Like, for example, I absolutely loved Henry's prank. I've pulled up the page. Let me read the quote verbatim. Make eye contact with the turkey. Do you have it? Right, now hold it. Connect with the turkey. Earn the turkey's trust. Befriend the turkey. Buy a summer home in Mallorca with the turkey. At first, it's making sense. Things you want to logically do to get the bird to like you. But then it goes to buy a summer home in Mallorca. And I thought that was so funny. That was absolutely hysterical when I read it the first time. The next difference happens at the New Year's Eve party that Alex throws at the White House. So in the book, Henry's best friend Percy is obsessed. He is infatuated head over heels with June. But in the movie, obviously June does not exist, so Percy now has a crush on Nora instead. They didn't remove his love, they just swapped which character it was towards. We have the same quote, minus one word, obviously because of their name, and he says to Nora, quote, Miss Holloran, you are the most exquisite woman I've ever seen in my life. So next up is a quote that I deem as very iconic from the movie, even though, let's be honest, I have no idea what it means, but it is only a movie quote. It is not in the book at all in any way, shape, or form to have been paraphrased. The movie just entirely made this up. And this is the scene post-kissing Henry for the first time. I kind of brought it up before. But anyway, the quote in particular, it says, He grabbed my hair in a way that made me understand the difference between rugby and football. Alex is saying that about Henry. So in the movie, there is a scene where Alex, Henry, Percy, and Nora go to a country-themed bar. They are in Texas at the lake house, and they take a trip to go to this bar. They're drinking shots, doing karaoke, having a great time. Whereas in the book version of this same scene, they're actually in London, also with B and June in the group. And the bar they go to, they wear kimonos. And the only reason I know that kimono and country western are the exact same scene is because of Henry's song in particular. Don't Stop Me Now by Queen was prominent in both the book and the movie. Also, speaking of the lake house, it appears to me at least that in the book, they've owned the lake house basically forever. Alex's whole childhood spent having summers there. Whereas in the movie, they only buy it after Ellen's book has been published. Now, I don't know exactly when she published that book. Maybe we are in fact on the same timeline and I'm just wrong, but to me that seems like yet another difference between the two. So yet another lake house difference that I've noticed is when Alex and Henry are having their deep conversation. In the book version, it is nighttime and they are in shallow water / at the edge of the lake sitting on the grass, being annoyed by mosquitoes. When Henry wants to dip, he can just stand up and walk away. But in the movie, when he wants to dip, he has to dive into the water and swim away because they are out in the middle of it on a wooden floating dock. As well, there's yet another iconic quote that is only in the movie version. There is no parody of this anywhere in the book. Quote, "It's like there's this rope attached to my chest and it keeps pulling me towards you. It feels so right." That's what Alex says to Henry, which is probably why he dips in the first place. Another difference between the book and the film is that in the book, there's a scene where Henry invites Alex to join him at Wimbledon for a tennis match. B, Philip, and Martha are also going to be there. But in the movie, we do not have that scene at all. There is no Wimbledon, there is no tennis. I saw something online. People thought that Wimbledon and the polo were kind of fused into one because they did have a makeout scene at the Wimbledon match. They left the royal seating box and went somewhere else. But the thing is, in the book, they do still have a polo makeout as well. They're in the storage room, they're in the barn, so I would not say they're the same thing. I would just say that tennis was cut, and that's it. It's a plain, dry story where the book had 2 scenes and the movie had 1 scene. In the book, Bee's character actually has a subplot where she has to go to rehab because she's been abusing hard drugs. She's too high on cocaine and all that stuff too frequently. But in the movie, they just wrote out that subplot entirely and made her a nice little princess. The last difference that I have noted down is that in the scene where Henry gives Alex his ring to have a small piece of him before he can have all of him again, it is only in the movie version where Alex gives up his key to Henry. In the book version, Alex still has his key and the ring is now on that chain with both. In the movie, since obviously there is no chain, he does in fact wear the ring on his finger. There's a later scene when they're going to meet the king that Henry goes to spin the ring on his finger. He does that a lot when he's nervous, but obviously there is no ring, and it cuts to the scene of Alex wearing the ring. And also, I really loved Alex giving the key to Henry because it holds a double meaning. Partially, it means Alex's love, blah, 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 same difference as Henry giving the ring, but also Henry has never owned a key in his life ever before, so it really hit home that now he finally owns one. No pun intended, since it is a house key. So now I'm going to go through my notes that I specifically wrote while watching the film. These are the thoughts, opinions, and quotes that I specifically wanted to point out. These notes will be in chronological order, start of the film to the end of the film. So the first scene that I'm pointing out takes place at Alex's New Year's Eve party, the one he and Nora are throwing at the White House. And specifically, it's after the 10-second countdown. It is now officially midnight and officially the next year. And when Alex is kissing those random other women, Henry looks so heartbroken. Like in his face, you can tell that he wishes it was him and that he's already loving Alex at this point of the movie. Then, fast forward, after he does kiss Alex out in the garden, he has another look that's, holy crap, what have I done? At least that's my interpretation anyway, before we see him walk away. So next is another Alex and Henry kissing scene. This one is during the Prime Minister's dinner when Alex gets Amy's help to bring Henry to the Red Room. When Amy comes back in the door and says their time is up, their reaction to being caught is hilarious. The way that Alex studies that plant, the way that Henry studies those books, it's like that plant and those books are suddenly the most interesting thing ever that they've both seen in their lives. It's really funny. And then right after, walking down the hallway, there are quotes. Alex, so are you still? Henry, like Stonehenge. Alex, your royal hardness. It's really funny. I love that entire scene. Also at this same dinner, Alex's mom is introducing him to the Prime Minister, and since he happens to be next to Henry during this introduction, the Prime Minister says that it's good to see them on good terms and not on the floor. Alex responds with, quote, Henry and I are much happier against walls. If you get it, you get it, and it's really funny. I love the subtle innuendo that he put there. So later on, the two men are up in the room that Alex is staying in, and Henry, in describing his sexuality, says, quote, as gay as a maypole. Now, the first few times I heard that line, I thought he said gay as a maple, and I was very confused what that even meant. Eventually, I did hear the line correctly, and I was still confused, because same as Alex, I have no idea what a maypole is. I'm not up on my British lore. But finally, when I did see a picture of it, I understood what Henry was talking about. If you look up a picture for yourself, there are some like rainbow-colored ribbons and string and whatnot off the top of the pole, and I think that's probably what he's going off of, given that the gay flag, the queer flag, is rainbow. Now, after watching that particular scene that I just mentioned, compared to how it played out in the book, and also other scenes later on in the movie, we're proving that though the movie does have some sex in it, and there is a sex scene I'm going to be talking about later on, it definitely has less sex than the book had. So now we are at the point of the movie where it is Henry's polo match that he invited Alex to, and I really love how they shot/edited this scene to have an overlay of the polo game with the makeout scene in the barn/storage shed. They don't have just the makeout and then just the polo, or vice versa. I really love how they kept splitting between the two, and it made the scene a lot more interesting to watch overall. Speaking of the polo match, here are a few additional things that I'd like to point out about that scene, some differences that I forgot to mention in my previous list. So in the movie, that scene that I was just talking about previously to this polo discussion, that is when Henry asks Alex to join him at the match. It is all one scene. However, in the book, it is, quote, 2 weeks after the state dinner when Henry phones Alex to invite him to the match. The match is in, quote, Greenwich, Connecticut. However, in the film, Henry says the word Windsor. So is that Windsor, UK? Or is that Windsor, Connecticut, keeping us at least in the same state as the book has written? And I always thought that it was UK prior to reading the book and watching the movie to begin with. And the movie does seem to confirm that, because there's an Eiffel Tower shot and French music before we see Henry and Alex sitting in the cafe. And we see that cafe scene directly after we see the polo scene. So unless this particular US state just loves to pretend they're France, them being in the UK would make more sense to have this French element, because maybe the cafe literally is in Paris, they just hopped over the borderline. Also, when Henry and Alex are in their hotel room, they see the Eiffel Tower again through the window of their bedroom. Now, I don't know for sure whether or not I'm right in my guess that the polo match is actually in the UK in the movie compared to being in the States in the book, but I want to guess that I was right, because after the cafe scene, we get a sex scene. I'll be discussing that soon. And then after the sex scene, we see a shot of Alex flying home. It's very plausible that he's flying from Connecticut to Washington, D.C. I'm not sure how far apart their states are. I'd have to check a map. But it's more plausible that he's flying from London, because we know that happens multiple times before and after in the movie. So I did go ahead and look up a map. If you compare Connecticut, which is an East Coast state, to Washington, D.C., which is a district, not a state or a city, it is also on the East Coast, closely bordered by Maryland and Virginia. If Alex were to drive from the White House to the polo match, it would take him about 6 hours. If he were to fly, it would take him about 1 hour. So theoretically, he could have been flying that 1 hour in the scene we saw, but for a number of reasons, as I already said, I'm going to assume the polo match was in fact in London, or at least England somewhere. Henry did of course say Windsor in that hotel room scene previously. Going back to that cafe scene, I kind of glossed over it when I was discussing the polo match. There's a quote that I would like to discuss. So Alex is asking Henry what his full name is, and Henry responds with, quote, Henry George Edward James Hanover-Stuart Fox. Alex then says, and I thought Alexander Gabriel Claremont Diaz was a mouthful. So Henry says, he is, and that's the part that I especially love, that he is. The subtle sex joke is iconic, it's hilarious, loved it, loved the scene. Now I am going to discuss the sex scene. I've alluded to it before, but I have a few points that I wanted to make in regards to it specifically. So number one is when they take their clothes off. I really appreciate that is literally all they do. Alex takes off his clothes by himself. Henry takes off his clothes by himself. I talk about this all the time, / think about this all the time when I'm watching movies and TV shows, when I'm reading books, any media that has a sex scene in it. Why the actual hell are the characters making out and removing their clothes at the same time? If you were to do both activities separately, you would get your clothes off so much easier, so much faster, so much better. Like the entire thing would just be smarter if you could take 2 seconds of not kissing. And that's not 2 little seconds, it's just an expression. But like if you could take the time to take the clothes off separately from the making out, it would be a lot smarter of a scene. Also, when they describe the buttons on their shirt as rigid buttons, I'm not sure whether or not I hate that. Like, part of me is disturbed and part of me thinks it's nothing. Maybe I'm overreacting, maybe I'm not, but I just didn't really like the description of rigid buttons for some reason. Now cut to when they're actually lying in the bed. Alex is on top of Henry, and the way that the key is swinging, like the necklace on the chain, it looks like the key is going to go into Henry's mouth. It obviously doesn't, but my interpretation of the angle of the scene, it really looks like it easily could, it just never actually does. Overall, though, I thought the entire scene was very cute and very sensual. I love the hand movements and the body positions. Some things confused me a little bit. I wasn't sure how logic would work, but overall, I loved their touches and I loved what they showed us. I especially loved at the end of the scene the top-down camera angle that just slowly got closer and closer towards the characters' faces. Like, for example, Alex's arm on the pillow. Why does his arm look so jacked? Like, oh my god, Taylor has a very good workout regimen, and this scene is proving it in his arm. There's a scene where Alex is talking to his mom, and she says that she was first elected to Congress when she was 28. But as Alex is leaving the room after their argument, he ends up saying, no, actually, you were 27. Ask any woman who works for you, and they could tell you that. And I absolutely loved that roast. Get told, get destroyed. Maybe I'm overthinking it. It's not a roast, but to me, it totally was. It could have just been a simple correction. Like, hey, ask anybody, they'll know that I'm not wrong. But, like, I loved the way it was delivered, where it sounded like he was destroying her. Nicely, of course, but, like, still savage. Alex had made a 14-page memo that he sent to the elections team to try and prove why they should focus on Texas, Ellen's home state, why they should make sure Texas is blue to win the election. And at first, nobody's reading it, but long story short, he convinces his mom to read it, And because she likes it, she sends him to Texas to implement the things written in that memo. When Alex is in Texas, that is when we get the first email between Alex and Henry. The emails are being read as an overlay montage to the montage of Alex doing Congress work in Texas. I thought these emails were so cute, so adorable. The entire conversation was beautiful. Later on, from being in Texas, Alex is now in Brooklyn, New York for a different presidential event. He's at the bar having a drink when Miguel shows up, Mr. Michael, who I absolutely cannot stand. But then, shortly after, we see Henry, who's come to the hotel to support and be with Alex. And I very much appreciated / like that. We were able to leave a stupid Michael scene, because I hate him in this movie, and get a cute couple scene with Alex and Henry. That same hotel that I just mentioned, it is now the next morning, and Alex overslept his alarm, if it even went off at all. It is 7 a.m. with Zara pounding on the door because he has to be downstairs for interviews. Zara then busts through the door and comes into the room. When she sees a second phone on the nightstand, she assumes that Alex has been with a girl. She assumes that this girl never signed an NDA, which is a big problem, but it's ironic because at least in the book version, Alex did sign Henry's NDA. So that makes Zara wrong on 2 counts. First, the gender, and then the NDA. It's also very ironic that where Henry was hiding was a literal closet. Like, to physically, for real, stick the gay guy in a closet is iconic behavior, and I really appreciated that choice. Granted, where else could he go? Except for, like, I don't know, hiding in the shower or something, but I really appreciate how they did that because it was comedic as hell. Also, this scene gave me not only my favorite Zara quote, but probably my favorite quote of the entire franchise, both book and movie. The quote is, "We're in a hotel crawling with reporters. If anyone sees you leave this hotel, I will Brexit your head from your body, Your Royal Highness." The next scene is Alex finally coming out to his mom. He tells her he's met someone potentially relevant to the campaign. She asks if it's a Republican, and he explains that she is actually he, and he is Henry, Prince of England. When Ellen picks up the phone, it scares Alex. What is she going to say to who? But all she does is order some pizzas they can eat while they're talking. Now, in the book version, there's actually a bit of a delay from the initial "I'm telling you I came out" to their conversation on the couch. Ellen has time to make her classic iconic PowerPoint, but in the movie, there is no PowerPoint. The next scene after the coming out is Alex in the closet packing to go to the lake house in Texas. Now, if you don't have any spoilers, that scene just looks like some dude packing. Big whoop. But I had spoilers, so it was very emotional to me because of the hat that Alex wore. Fast forward to the karaoke scene, Henry himself is wearing that hat in the bar. Speaking of the bar, it's really funny that Henry says, "No, I'm not going to do karaoke," and then we instantly cut to him belting out "Don't Stop Me Now" by Queen. Like, we go from "No, I'm not doing that" to him doing it in like half a second. At the beach house, we see a montage of different scenes happening, one of which is a volleyball game, and this one totally reminded me of the beach volleyball from Kissing Booth 3. One of the 4 characters playing in the Kissing Booth volleyball game is named Marco, and Marco is played by Taylor, the same Taylor who plays Alex, obviously. We have a scene of Alex and Henry reading together in the hammock. I thought this scene existed in the movie, but there was no reference of anything even close in the book, so I thought that maybe I was delusional and it was actually from something else, but no, I was right. It clearly is from this. I was proven. And I loved that Alex was reading One Last Stop. I love these subtle plug/reference for another Casey McQuiston novel. In fact, in the copy that I have of Red, White, Well, Blue, there's a preview at the end, 15 pages, for One Last Stop. I'm not sure when I'm going to read it, but it is on my massively long, 4,000 long TBR. I'll get to it when I get to it. In the lake house, the morning after getting drunk at the karaoke bar, there is a Quote from Oscar. I believe it is the same in both the film and the movie, but I absolutely love the quote either way. It's very funny, whatever it is that he's trying to mean. Quote, the patron saint of gender-neutral bathrooms in Austin. So now we have Alex and Henry's, let's call it a breakup, for lack of a better term. Since their last conversation at the lake house, Alex has essentially been ghosted. Every text, call, anything that he sends to Henry is not being responded. So eventually Alex has had enough of sitting around moping, and he goes to London to do something about it. And this scene is probably one of my favorites from the entire movie. I absolutely love it. It's awesome, amazing, iconic, beautiful. I could go on with synonyms. It's epic, but I won't. I'm going to save the time. If you've read the book, then you know. If you've watched the movie, then you know. The acting in it is superb. The emotions, the words, everything. I can't rave about this scene enough. There is not enough words. There is not enough time. Specifically, there's one quote from Alex that I would like to mention. It's probably my favorite in the scene. I've been losing my mind this week because the man I love has vanished from my life without an explanation. I flew across an ocean. I stormed an effing castle to look you in the eyes and tell you that I love you, knowing you wouldn't say it back. I absolutely love that line, adore it to the highest degree. There's also a line from Henry that I really like, but I forgot to write down the movie version of his, so I will be reading the book version. It's different, but the gist is the same at the beginning and the end. That part they kept the same. So it says, quote, I'm not like you. I can't afford to be reckless. I don't have a family who will support me. I don't go about shoving who I am in everyone's faces and dreaming about a career in effing politics so I can be more scrutinized and picked apart by the entire world. I can love you, want you, and still not want that life. I'm allowed. Alright? It doesn't make me a liar. It makes me a man with some infinitesimal shred of self-preservation, unlike you, and you don't get to call me a coward for it. Now the quote of Henry's that I just read from the book, I'm going to try and remember one subline from the movie version because that is the best subline of the entire quote. And basically the gist of that line is Henry saying that his family is less supportive than Alex's. They're less open, understanding, accepting, etc. And the line goes something like, here's my best guess, I didn't grow up with parents who couldn't wait to tear the closet doors off fast enough. Or something like that. Anyway, if I don't have it verbatim, you get the gist. The next scene I want to talk about is when Alex and Henry go dance in the museum. When I watch clips on TikTok or YouTube, for whatever reason, I had this idea in my head that this particular scene was way earlier in the plot than it actually was. The book proved that, and the movie, of course, confirmed it. I didn't mind that it was later in the movie, I just had my timelines all wrong for whatever reason, because to me it made sense to have it earlier. But anyway, that being said, it was still a very great and wonderful scene. I loved Henry showing this side of himself to Alex. I loved them dancing to that song, very cute, and I especially loved Alex's quote. He says, history, huh? Bet we could make some. That quote is in both the movie and the book versions. Only in the book version is it turned into t-shirts that everyone wears in support of their relationship, but either way, it's a very nice quote. So not long after they dance in the museum, that is when we get the leak of their relationship, all the emails they wrote and whatnot that has now gone public. And this leak just proves yet again why I hate Michael, as I've said earlier in this video. I'm not saying he caused the leak or anything, but he had to have known something to read all 70 emails and publish the article in the time span that he did from the first leak. Like, he had to have some kind of advanced knowledge to be that quick. Nobody can do it. Like, it seems inhuman that he had that speed. The speech that Alex makes on TV because of the leak, I really enjoyed that scene. It was a very cute, loving, wholesome speech, but at the same time, the scene was a bit bittersweet and somber because you see Henry in all these meetings and being ushered around, and he just looks so depressed. Like, he's not okay, given that this has come out off of his own terms. Now, with this leak, Henry and Alex are unable to communicate with each other because both the palace and the White House have gone on some kind of a lockdown. In fact, in the film version, Bee's phone and laptop were also taken away so that Henry cannot use hers to reach out and find some of the means of getting to Alex. Now, because Alex is moping around and missing Henry so much, this is where we get a major plot twist about Zara, her character, that I did not see coming at all. So we know in the book version that she has a boyfriend. In fact, we know who's engaged to said boyfriend because there's a giant ring on her finger at a certain point going forward. And in the movie, there were some subtle hints. I thought that her and Sean had crushes on each other, but to be confirmed that Sean officially is the boyfriend, I never, in a trillion years, would have had that on the bingo card. Never, ever. And if you're wondering why the heck this has to do anything with Alex and Henry missing each other, well, it's because Zara uses her personal phone to call Sean's personal phone. They said they'd only use those numbers in emergencies. They try to stick to their work phones or something, but clearly this is that emergency. Like, my brain was speechless. You know, when you keyboard smash and it just comes out as gibberish? That's what I felt like. I couldn't form any thoughts because I was like, what the heck? This is actually canonically real? This is happening? Alex's face in the movie and how shook he was to hear Zara talking to Sean in that way is the exact same reaction that I had. But here's my question. Is Alex more shook in the fact that A, Zara has Sean's personal number, or B, in the reference of nakedness? What is more shocking to him? I'm not sure. But either way, it seems that this phone call between Sean and Zara, they're able to work things out. Zara's phone gets passed to Alex, Sean's phone gets passed to Henry, and they have a slight conversation. In that conversation, in which Alex hears how badly Henry is doing, he agrees to fly over to London to be with him. That scene when they meet on the stairs is so cute. Henry coming down from the top, Alex coming up from the bottom. It's overlaid with Alex's line, quote, "I'll break the sound barrier for you." That is the most adorable crap in the whole movie. Like, this entire scene, so cute. And I know I've said this before, but you can't not watch this movie and say that things are cute. You can't not watch it and say this is adorable. It's impossible. I think I got a little heated there. Something about that particular scene compared to the rest of the film. But anyway, calming down, the next thing I want to mention is the meeting that Alex and Henry have with the king, aka Henry's grandpa. And specifically, I want to point out their positions on the couch. Like, the first time they sat on a British couch together was for those TV reports, those TV interviews, and they could not be farther apart, one on this end, one on that end, and they had to be asked by the reporters to scooch closer in the middle. Whereas this time around, meeting the king, they're already in the middle. They could not possibly be any closer without literally sitting on each other's laps. It is impossible to be any closer than they are. And so I just love the parallel, the symbolism, how the relationship started this far apart, we are enemies, to this close, we now love each other. It's a great evolution of character throughout the movie. Also, in that same meeting scene, I want to point out Philip's suit, because for some reason there was something about the pinstripe pattern that just gave me mob boss vibes. Like, he's giving New York gangster. He's giving Italian gangster. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know why, but that suit pattern does not look good on Philip at all, in my opinion. That was the last clip that I wanted to talk about, either from the book or from the movie. So I will now move on to my rating. This is a combination of both together, what I give out of 10. My official rating for the Red, White, and Royal Blue franchise is going to be a 9.75 out of 10. I highly, highly recommend this franchise to anyone who will listen to me talk about it. I had the book on my TBR for years, but first truly got obsessed with the social media spoilers I had mentioned. That obsession was confirmed when I read the book. There was one day I literally spent 4 hours sitting in the same chair and reading it. I enjoyed watching the movie very much because it put the timeline into correct order for me. A few scenes that I had misplaced, now I knew exactly how they slotted in and why. But the only reason I don't give it a full 10, the only reason it loses that 0.25 of a mark, is because it's your classic trope, enemies to lovers. Before you even read page 1, you know exactly how it's going to end. And I'm not just saying that because you read the back jacket. I'm saying that because it's happened in how many books throughout time. Maybe this is the first president's child dates prince and they're both the same gender kind of vibe, but overall, you understand how the trope plays out. Even so, I highly, highly recommend it. It's a great portrayal of that trope. It is a phenomenal read, a phenomenal movie. You must consume it. But that is why it doesn't get the full 10, because we're falling into the standard trope that's been used over and over. Now that I've given my official rating, that's going to wrap up this video. If you enjoyed it, please drop a big like down below and subscribe if you're new so you don't miss any of my future content. Check me out on social media, always linked in the description. Feel free to leave me a comment if you've read this book and or watched this movie. I'm interested to hear what you have to say. I would love to read them. And aloha till next time!